Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to it so much, chatting to you.
Me too, me too. Before we go into all the things I'm dying to ask you about, can you just tell everyone who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Oh, the easiest way is I'm Amy Molloy. I'm known as a journalist. That's the very simple description of what I do. I write books, I ghostwrite books. I'm known for probably talking and writing about the death of my first husband, which is obviously very, very relevant to you and what you do. And the book I wrote 17 years ago now, when I was in my early 20s, about grief and living with grief as a young widow and sexuality and grief and how messy it can look. And it was very controversial, very out there, and very forward thinking at the time, and
Mm,
really changed the way that we talk about grief and recovery. And then
yeah.
from then, I've gone on to write a lot about mental health and wellness, a lot
Mm,
about social issues that impact women. And now, in the newest iteration of my career, found my way into writing about spirituality and trying to break down these big spiritual concepts in a way that is less of a us and them conversation of like the
mm,
spiritual niche community versus everyone else. Again,
mm.
very similar to what you do and why I love you.
Aw.
And taking away some of that jargony, kind of airy fairy language around spirituality and making
Mhm.
it really easy to digest and understand. So that's pretty much where I am now.
Oh, I love that. And even just the last thing that you said, like, I am about no bullshit. Like, I
Yeah.
can't handle all these words and phrases and the 5D and the 3D and all. No one gets that. No one
No
knows what
one
the fuck you're
knows.
talking about.
I've been studying this stuff for years and reading it and writing about it. And so much of it still goes completely over my head when we start talking about quantum leaping and everything else. I'm like,
Yeah.
give me something tangible that when I'm like, my kids are losing their shit and I need to get to work and chat to you on the podcast and the morning's been a
Yes.
disaster, I need to tap into something real to me, like
Yeah.
faithful and belief based, but that feels real.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we have a lot in common with that.
We do. I kind of want to sort of go back to what you said right at the start in terms of your journey with becoming a widow and how that
Mm.
all unfolded for you. So obviously I think you were 23 at the time. How did you manage that? How did you get through that? Did you have kids at the time with this person, or what was your scenario?
So I had met my first husband, Owen, when I was 21. I was backpacking around Australia, as you do as an English person. He was actually Irish, but was over here for a number of years, had actually completely outstayed his visa, was over here illegally, which is very him, just very seize the day, absolutely his personality. So we met and had just that fairy tale fall in love, just very wild and passionate and free. Two kids on an adventure. And I had to go back to England to finish my degree, my journalism degree. So he ended up coming back with me. Long story short, he began having chest pains, was taken to hospital, and they found a spot on his lung. They actually found out he'd had malignant melanoma, skin cancer, which had already spread by that point to his liver, lungs, pancreas, and then within a year, his brain.
Oh my God.
So all within a year was a diagnosis and his death. So at one point we were engaged with plans to get married in the very, very far future. Just we were always planning what our big life looked like. He wanted to open a surf school in Dublin and how our kids would be surfing there. But we were told that he only had 3 months to live. And so we decided to get married, and we had the wedding that you see in the movies where the dying man is getting married and everybody knows what's going to happen. And it was very surreal. And even now, just feels like, talking about something I've watched on Netflix, not something I lived through.
Yeah.
And he ended up dying 3 weeks after our wedding day. He had a stroke whilst we were laying in bed and woke up the next day very confused, didn't know who he was, didn't know who I was. And I managed to get him to the hospital, and he fell into a coma and didn't wake up. And so there I was, this 23-year-old, trying to digest and process this monumental thing and also figure out what the next part of my life looked like. Because this really interesting thing happened with my mum, and we have a kind of complicated relationship, but she was very much there for me during this time and still is. And she said to me, you know, it's been so amazing watching you nurse this person to his death.
Mm.
In my eyes, she said, you don't need to do anything more in life. Like, you're done now. This is the most amazing thing you could ever do, which sounds lovely, right? But I was
Mm.
23 and I was like, what? So this is it? This is the peak of
Yeah.
everything? Like, I have a long life to lead. This can't be what I hang my hat on for the rest of my life.
Mm.
And so I guess part of my life has been figuring out what comes next, how
Mm.
to feel that the romance of our relationship of getting married to a dying man and you know, it sounds weird, but the thrill of
Yeah.
that heightened everything, and how to then go on with the rest of my life and still find that feeling and fall in love again, which I have. I'm married now, I've got 3 kids, but how to recreate that when you don't have that drama and stress in the situation has been really interesting. So
Yeah.
what helped me was, I guess, you know, a version of spirituality looking back,
Mm.
um, realizing through many different avenues that we are part of something bigger, that life is not what we think it is, that it's not as simple as a beginning of an ending, that we
Yeah.
are all part of this tapestry. And just figuring out my way in that has been really important.
Yeah.
And then sharing my story, sharing other people's stories, talking about this shit,
Yeah.
being very honest about it.
Yeah.
The ups and downs,
Yeah.
how complicated it is. Healing is not linear and recovery is not simple.
Mm.
That's become a big part of my purpose moving forward.
Yeah, and I think you sharing your story and being open and vulnerable about it and almost like your lens on it too. Like looking back on
Mm,
it being like it was so full on and there was so much drama around it and all that kind of stuff. Like that in itself, like yes, for some people that's their normal, but in everyday life, like that's not normal. Like that's not
mm.
the way that most people get married. Like that's not the circumstances that most people experience when it comes to that. So that would
Yeah.
have been so weird for you to look back on your old or that relationship you had with him and that marriage and then the one that you have now. It probably feels like polar opposite energy.
It's just very strange, to be honest. I talk about it and I
Mm.
talk about it openly so that people don't feel guilty about how they're feeling with a loss
Yeah.
because it's so mixed. Like, that was, in many ways, the most wonderful time of my life. Like, I remember the day he died, and it was so incredible and heartbreaking, but amazing. And then my life now is equally amazing, but in a very different way.
Yeah.
And, you know, that I think, learned to accept my grief more as I've got older,
Yeah.
and to accept that I don't have to actually pretend it's not there, that I
Mm.
can still say I really miss him, that I can
Yeah.
still talk to. I think I know him, Owen, better now than I probably did back then. My connection to him in many ways has only grown stronger. But that's weird too, right? Because I have a
Mhm.
husband that I love. My
Yeah.
pitch for my first book ended up being called Wife Interrupted. But you'll appreciate this. My pitch to my publisher when I got my book deal, the title was Widow's Threesome. Because you get it, right? Like, I
Yeah.
would be, at the time, I was super promiscuous, having so many one night stands, but I would be laying in bed with a physical guy. And I would imagine Owen behind me, like spooning me, because that's how real his spirit felt to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, how can I talk to this about anyone? How can I be having a one night stand with a locket around my neck with a piece of my first husband's hair in it? How am I meant to get my head around any of this? And you know, all my friends were just going through normal breakups. They hadn't just nursed a man to his death.
Yeah.
So I had no guidebook, no rule book. I didn't know how to talk about it. So yeah, that definitely inspired my slightly oversharing attitude to everything because
Mm.
you know, I still get so many messages from people who are reading Wife Interrupted, and it's not all they've lost a husband, it's losing anyone or
Yeah.
not or a breakup or any kind of loss or grief, saying like thank you for saying the stuff I'm scared to say. That
Mm,
sounds crazy or disrespectful, or, we shouldn't say that.
hmm
So many people reach out and say thank you. So yeah, it was all worth it.
Oh my gosh. I cannot even imagine like your journey, but gosh, giving yourself permission to be honest, that's
Mm,
massive. Like just going,
yeah.
all right, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to come out and be there and be raw so that other people can feel less alone. It's amazing. I
And
commend you.
it's a privilege of doing it in your 20s, right? I didn't strategically do it. I just didn't know any better. It was just kind of the only way I knew how to like move on and talk about it. I get more nervous and more careful about it as I get older, but I try and push against it. I actually try and go, no, what would that 20-year-old Amy do? She was bold and brave and courageous.
Mm.
Let's tap back into her when I think, oh, I'm a mum now. I shouldn't say this or I shouldn't do that. Or I try and think, no, what would Amy do back then?
Yeah, I love that. I sometimes think about that too. I'm like, oh gosh, me way back when, like Jesus, if only I had that girl's like, push and that
Gutsiness.
drive and that who
Yeah,
gives a shit kind of thing. So I'm the same as you. I sometimes remind myself, I'm like, come on, Jess, you've been braver than this before. Like,
I
do it.
know.
Oh my God. I actually was really fascinated when I was sort of reading a lot about you because I love to like research everyone that I'm obviously talking to on here because I want to make sure we align and all the things. But you said something and it kind of stuck out for me where you said we're so wired to connect. Like we're wired to connect with everybody to the point
Mm.
where we can merge ourselves into other people and we actually lose ourselves like in the process. Can you expand on like how you came to think that way or like what you think we're sort of programmed to do perhaps?
Well, I'm just a massive empath, like
Mm,
many of us who work in kind of the teaching, healing, sharing, speaking space. It's
yeah.
why we can do what we do. Like, I'm also a ghostwriter. So, part of my work is literally writing other people's stories for them,
Mm,
taking their stories and finding the words. And there's such an entanglement that has to happen there to be able to
mm,
speak in your voice and to share your story.
mm,
And most of us who move through the world with this empathic energy, like it's amazing. It's how we connect. We are traditionally meant to sit in tribes, and
mm,
this is how we survive and share stories and raise kids together. We are meant to be entangled. However, because of the way that we connect to hundreds of millions of people across the world through social media and
mm,
the intensity of some of our modern relationships, we do lose ourselves in other people. I do this really physically. You probably do too. Like
yeah.
when I'm working with my ghostwriting clients, and one of them the other week was having really bad stomach issues. And
Mm,
I was picking up all of her physical sensations. And the whole time I was writing with her, I was getting her headaches, I was getting her stomach aches, I was getting her indigestion. And I was like, okay, I need to take a
wow.
moment. I need to cut some cords and
Mm,
untangle here because we are merging into one. And, I do it with my kids too. I have 3 kids, and one of them is absolute little empath. And he will come home from school with everybody's headaches and everyone's stomach aches. And, he picks up, if me and my husband are having an argument and trying to hide it from him, he's like, I see you. He'll get like a rash instantly if there's any kind of conflict in our house. He's like a
my
little
God.
emotional barometer. And I think, that just happens to all of us. We move through the world, and especially hearing other people's stories. Like, how often have, you've been talking to a friend who's going through a breakup or some kind of issue in her relationship, and that night you have a massive argument with your partner,
Yeah.
or they're worried about money and suddenly out of nowhere you're so stressed about your finances. There's this
Mm-hmm.
bonding that happens because we want to feel close to people,
Yeah.
and because we glorify suffering in our society above happiness. So we very rarely adopt other people's happiness and joy as easily as we adopt there's anxiety and stress and grief and sadness.
Mm,
So at the end of the day, it's kind of asking yourself, is this feeling that I'm feeling mine?
mm,
And I do it with my kids. I will say, like, do you think that bellyache is your bellyache? Or did anyone in your class have a bellyache today? And if it's not
mm,
ours, maybe we can give ourselves permission to let it go and watch it like dissolve into the sky,
mm,
because we don't have to carry it for other people. Yeah, like mummy's had a really shitty day. But you
mm,
know what? That's not your problem. I'll be fine. I'm going to go for a swim. I'm going to put on some music and I'll be fine. Like, you don't need to carry it. You
mm,
can just feel good in your body because everything's okay. And like I do it with my kids, but we forget it as adults, especially with our partners, because we think that love is entanglement.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really big lesson for me watching my first husband go through chemo and the stress of chemo and his good days and bad days, my good days and bad days. We had to realize we were in it together, but if we both went
Yeah.
down with the ship, we were
Mm-hmm.
not going to be able to survive this as a couple. We
Yeah.
had to learn that, like, I could be happy when he was struggling. He could be hopeful when I was hopeless.
Yeah.
And that was the only way that we were able to stay buoyant together. So that was a massive lesson for me that I have tried unsuccessfully at times, especially with kids,
Yeah.
because we are totally entangled with them. But I've tried at least with my husband to stay separate but together energetically.
Yes, I think that's so important too. I am very much an empath, as people would not be surprised. And I can take on everyone else's energy, like, and I'm in and out of people's energy all day. So I have to work super hard to make sure I'm not carrying everyone else's crap, like at the end of the day. And some days I'm exhausted. Other days I'm full of beans. Just depends on who I'm talking to and what's going on. But I'm trying so much harder now to, I guess, remove everyone else's residual energy from me and kind of still stay in
Mm.
my own body and in my own energy. And as you said, realize what's mine and what's not mine. But you just ask yourself questions. That's what I do, which is exactly
Mm.
what you're asking of your children. Do you think this is yours? What actually happened today? Is there really that much worry going on? Or are we kind of just exaggerating it for whatever reason? I feel like I'm always catastrophizing things. It's just the way I've always been. I'm like, oh no, what if this happens and then this and this, this and this? And I find that if I'm around certain people that do that, it makes me a little bit more like that. So that's why I try and be
Mm.
around calm, fun people because I'm definitely the business mode kind of chick. So I need people to lighten me up every now and then.
Oh, me too. And I spend a lot of my time talking about these kind of topics, but I
Yeah.
do try and do it with a bit of humor and a bit of lightness.
Yeah.
Because most of my work is writing about trauma adjacent topics or helping other people to share their trauma stories. So you
Yeah.
do have to find a way. Like there's a lot of laughter on my book mentoring calls when I'm helping people write memoirs. There's a
Yeah.
surprising amount of laughter and joking, even when we're talking about some really gritty things, because it
Yeah.
has to be that way. And
Yeah.
it can only be that way for me to I had a really first-hand view very early on of how grim life can be. My
Mm.
dad was paralyzed from cancer when I was 17.
Oh my
He's
God.
alive and kicking now and a miracle and cycling up huge hills and it's glorious. But I had that. And then just as he entered remission, my first husband was diagnosed.
Oh
So literally
God.
from 17 onwards, I had evidence that, terrible things can happen to really great people.
Mm.
And I had to find a way of living with that truth, but still being the person I want to be in the world, which is someone who tries to be glass half full and optimistic and hopeful.
Yeah. Hmm.
So you have to have a plan in place for that. That doesn't just happen that you get over that
Yeah.
stuff. You have to, I always say I'm strategically happy.
Yeah.
I work hard at it and I
Mhm.
choose it every day. And especially since having kids, I really choose it for my kids that we talk about the hard stuff, but we celebrate really hard in this house.
Oh, I love that. You need to. I don't think we
Mm.
celebrate the little things enough, and that honestly sometimes makes all the difference. All the little things add up. All the little things you do
Yes.
for yourself throughout the day, or things you say to yourself, like all of that. It doesn't mean you have to go out and go on a big holiday to feel happy. Like it can literally be, oh, I'm so glad this morning I took the time to, as you say, go for a swim. Or I took the
Yes.
time to like listen to myself and be in the quiet for a minute. It's not as complicated as what I feel like we make it be when it comes
Yes,
to
I
trying to be
agree.
happy.
Mm.
I want to kind of go into parenting because I know you've mentioned your kids a few times, and I feel like you have a fascination with past lives, and so do I. So I want to talk about past lives, and when kids say shit, and you're like, how do you know that? Or what are you talking about? Like when they're like, oh, I used to be a woman, or I used to be this, or I used to be on a farm, and you're like, what? Like, what is happening? Can you talk about your experience with past lives and have your kids
Yes.
said anything like that to you?
So my new book, which I did not plan to write, I always say I write where I'm led, and it takes me to some wild and wonderful places. And my new book is called Wise Child, and it's about kids across the world who are appearing to remember past lives and how this latest generation, Gen Alpha, are highly eloquent, highly spiritually tapped in, tuned in, and are
Hmm.
really here to completely shift our perspective and force us to see the world differently.
Mm.
And it was based on my experience with my little boy and bigger than that, but it really cemented it with him when he was born. And from the moment he arrived, landed, he was just very unhappy, very unsettled. He was my second child, and my first was a breeze. She's like a little fairy. She's always happy. But my little boy was just, I couldn't soothe him. I couldn't make him happy. And I kept saying to my husband, he just doesn't seem to want to be here. I kept repeating it over and over again. And I have a beautiful spiritual healer in England who I've been visiting ever since my first husband died. My dad, who was a massive atheist, non-believer in anything, began having healing out of desperation during his cancer treatment.
Yeah.
And now he's just like this hilarious, like London Cockney dude who like wears crystals and very quietly is on his own spiritual journey. It's wonderful. But he taught me to meditate when I was a teenager, so thankfully, and introduced me to my healer who has been with me for 20 years.
Wow.
And during a session with her when I flew back to England, I think I said to her, like, I don't know how to parent this kid. Like
Mm.
I remember crying and I was desperate and exhausted. And I just thought, I don't know what to do with him. And during that session, she was shown a past life where he'd previously been a healer hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And she said he hasn't reincarnated for centuries and centuries. And that's why he's finding it so jarring to land in 2018 with the noise and the technology and the people. And also beyond that, number one, he's such an empath because he's a healer.
Yeah.
But also, he's so used to giving to everyone else, he doesn't know how to accept anything from you as his mum. So
Mm.
he's not letting you help him, not letting him soothe him. Like he just feels like he is alone. And it was such a completely life-changing moment for me as a mum. Number one, it just felt so true. It was like that moment, like whatever it sounds like to everyone else, it was like this missing piece of the jigsaw was just handed to me.
Yeah.
It helped me to parent him differently. We did some healing where imagine placing him on my chest and like wrapping him in light and letting him know, like, you're safe. This is your mother in this lifetime. Like, she is here for you.
Mm.
I stopped comparing him to his sister because I realized this is a completely different soul with his own life experiences across lifetimes. And it completely changed this baby. After that moment, like he slept through the night, his rashes cleared up, his cough went. He is still, like I said, my deep feeling child,
Yeah.
but the one that blows your mind with his wisdom and insight and advice. Like he's 7, and I will go to him for advice when I need to figure something out. He is still like has sensitivity to noise and crowds and technology. I have to really be careful about how much I let him have screen time, much more than my other kids.
Yeah. Wow.
And then with my journalist hat on, I was like, what is this? What just happened? Like, what
Mm.
is this about? So I spent 2 years researching what I called past life parenting.
Mm.
All these kids across the world who seem to be tapping into past life memories, and
Mm.
how, as parents, we can look at them completely differently, shake up this idea of the family being that parents need all the answers and kids know nothing, and see us as one big nervous system with, in our case, in our family, 5 people living in one household with multiple lives between us.
Mm-hmm.
And how can we parent with that? This was completely mind blowing to me and completely changed our family.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wow. I love that. And now I guess after you had that experience with your son and you had that moment of clarity or epiphany or whatever we want to call it, did it make you look at your other children differently? Did you start to think, oh, I wonder how what happened
Mm.
to them or where they've come from? Did it open your mind up to so much more?
Yes. And once again, talking about holding big topics in a way that's light, I just
Mm,
did it in a very fun way. All the experts
mm,
and healers and mediums and everyone I spoke to for this book, they were all clearly said, apart from a couple, like you don't need to put your kids into past life regression. This is not about
yeah.
doing a big thing. It's
Hmm.
about looking for spontaneous past life memories that they come out with, which they do, and
Mm,
these little snippets of wisdom that they tell us, and then just having fun, like piecing the pieces together. My little girl, my youngest, Haven, she was born during lockdown. And I always felt this level of guilt that she was just birthed into, an absolute shit show. There was
yeah.
race riots and pandemics and so much fear. And I always kind of thought, oh, what have I done, bringing her into this world? And when she was 3, out of nowhere, she said to me, Mummy, do you know I chose to be born during COVID? And we didn't talk about it. We don't talk about that stuff a lot in this house. So I chose to be born during COVID so you don't need to feel bad anymore. And she was
Oh my
3.
God.
Yes. And separately, my little boy has said to me, he's 7 now, again, out of nowhere, do you know, I've been thinking about the pandemic. And do you know, Mummy, that had to happen? Every now and again, we need something like that to completely change the world. And it's going to be the best thing that could happen to us.
You're probably wondering what just happened to the podcast. Me too. It's Jade. I'm Ben and Jess. And you know what's also Ben and Jess? Our Lime Glow candle. Here's your opportunity to stop listening to Jess talk about crap and go across and buy a candle and just cleanse stuff yourself. Do it now.
I know.
Oh
And my
my
kids
God.
aren't special, right? I've been talking to so many, and the best thing about this book has been people are coming out the woodwork, sending me messages on Insta and saying, "Oh my God, my kids said this thing." They remembered the in between their two lives, or they remember choosing me as their mum, or they're just talking about life, death, and gender and politics and money. And they're just blowing people's minds. And so many of these parents have kind of not shared what their kids say
Mm,
because it sounds weird or wacky, or because they don't want to sound boastful of saying, my child is gifted. I'm
yeah.
saying, no, this entire generation is special. They're
Hmm.
all blowing our minds. And if we actually take time to really listen, and it's so hard as a parent because my kids talk so much,
Mm.
and so much of it is about Pokemon and wanting to go for ice cream. And then out of nowhere, they just blow your mind by telling you about death or why we're here or what they think I should do. How they think I should unwind and de-stress, or how, there was so much of them woven through my book, Wise Child. They came up with the title, which they love, and their
Oh.
stories are woven through it and their friends. And it's really like I tell every parent, start a notes section on your phone and start writing down the crazy stuff your kids say or like the wow moments that they come out with. Because it's so easy to forget in the overwhelm of motherhood. Like they're smart and capable and they chose to be born here into this chaotic time and they're built for this. And we just need to remember that.
Yeah. I
Mm.
love that too. And I think one of the things that you've mentioned is like gender and sexuality and past life energy when it comes to that. What are your thoughts on that? And how is that sort of
Mm.
manifested for you?
There's emerging research, which I mentioned in my book, out of a university in America, which looked at kids who seem to remember past life memories,
Mm.
and then the gender they identify within this life.
Yeah.
And it's very new, but I did want to mention it in the book because it just was fascinating to me that, for instance, if a little boy, if my son, for example, um, now identifies as a girl,
Mm.
he's more likely to remember a past life in which he was a little girl in that past life. So there seems to be a merging of like past life memories and gender in this lifetime. And I
Mm.
think it just comes down to, for me, I really choose to believe my children within safe boundaries, right?
Yeah.
But I choose to believe when they feel unsafe or their instincts and the inner compass is guiding them in one way. And I still need to override it sometimes to say, no, we need to get in the car, we need to go to swimming lesson, we need to go to
Mm.
school for now, but we can have a big conversation later. But I think, there's so much pushback on kids these days who have strong opinions, especially around their instincts around the gender they
Hmm.
um, feel that they were born as. And if we could believe them within safe and protected boundaries, I think that is the best thing that we can do for
Yeah.
them. So, this book changed how I parented because it helped me to believe my kids. It helped me to really listen to them and just to stop overriding them with what I think is right for them. And
Mhm.
mine are little, so I do have to override them sometimes, but I try to do it as minimally as possible.
Yes, I think that's a really beautiful thing because one of the things that I feel, a lot of themes throughout my readings and with women I'm reading for is, oh, I don't like trust my instincts
Yeah.
or like I'm questioning myself and I know what's right, but I'm so scared. And I think, gosh, like along the way, we just get so far removed from our own point of view and our own instincts because people are constantly overriding us with fears and anxiety or, oh, if you do that, I remember my dad always used to say to me, if you make this decision, then you're going to have to live with the consequences of that. So it
Yes.
always made me feel like when I make a decision, there's always a negative consequence. So then I was paralyzed for so many years and frozen, couldn't make any bloody choice because I needed them to do it for me or I wouldn't feel like I'd make a good one. So it's such little things and sentences that people say to you, they run deep and it's hard to
Yes.
undo.
And how many of our kids, I mean, they're all psychic, right? They're
Yeah.
all so tapped in and tuned in. And even with past lives, most of them will forget them by the age of 7 because they go off to school and they learn what is you should say, what you shouldn't say, what sounds crazy, what doesn't,
Mhm.
and they conform. But
Yeah.
if we can somehow, at least in our home, give them the freedom to share, the people they're seeing at the end of their bed, share the voices. My little boy tells me all the time about the people that are talking all around him. And instead of being terrified, which is our instinct as parents, we are
Yeah.
mostly terrified all the time,
Mm.
is like, no, shut it down. That's scary. That feels weird. If we can just give them like an open space to talk about it, maybe they won't spend their whole teenage years and 20s ignoring it before finally at 40 being like, oh, wow, I've got a gift.
Yeah.
Maybe they can miss that part and actually stay believing in themselves their whole life. Then we have the little change makers that the world needs to save it.
Oh, that's beautiful. I've absolutely loved this conversation with you. You're incredible and you're just so my vibe. I'm so glad we
I
chatted.
know.
But before we go and before I get into all the weird questions that Jade has for you today, how can everyone connect with you?
The easiest way is Instagram. It's really,
Yeah.
really hang out at Amy_Molloy. On my website is everything, amymolloy.com.au, including all my beautiful writing courses, all of my books, and the meditation intuitive readings I do too, because that's a whole other part of my work. But you can find it all on there. And yeah, definitely, if anyone has their little wise child stories, I would love to hear about your kids. This is an open invitation to tell me how cool and gifted and special they are because it's just lit me up hearing all the stories since the book has come out. It's awesome. And I love that. I think the book could only come out now, right? I'm sure you're finding the fact that we're having these conversations in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Like the Daily Mail did a huge piece on the book. I thought they were going to rip it apart because I was like, and I worked for the Mail, like, but I know where we would have been 2 years ago, 1 year
Yeah.
ago. And
Hmm.
they just ran a huge spread on it saying how amazing and interesting is this book. And that
Oh.
says so much about where we are now, about this turning point, that
Hmm.
people like me and you can have these conversations out loud in the
Yeah.
mainstream. And everybody, like the majority of people, are interested and at least curious to learn more. So I'd
I
love that
agree.
for us. I love this for you and for everyone who's learning from it.
Me too. I love it too. And you're so right. Who knows where we would have said 2 years ago about what you're talking about right now, but it's so current and it's so real and I love it. So, all right, let's jump into your strange questions. Oh my God. All right. Was caramel discovered by two friends, Cara and Mel, who were trying to make butterscotch but made caramel instead?
I'm going to say no.
Oh my God, I read that and I was like, how do you come up with this shit? Seriously? Okay, why do cats have 9 lives?
Oh, that's a good question.
Who came up with nine?
Oh, but you know what? The journalist in me is desperate to Google it and actually find out now.
I know, you have to let me know.
I'm the person who like IMDb's everything as I watch a movie. It drives my husband nuts. I want all the trivia. I want everything goes on, how it's made, and I just say it out loud as we're watching movies. It drives everyone nuts. But I just love researching. So I'm going to go away and find out, and I'm going to come back and let you know.
Please do let me know because now I'm fascinated. All right, this is very personal, right? What's one of the worst smells in the world? Jade thinks it's when people don't wash their hair and you get a whiff of it when they walk past. What's your like pet peeve with smells?
I am so unsensitive to smells because I've got 3 stinky kids. But I do have visceral memories of the London Underground when I worked in London on a really hot day. You know, sandwich sardined in with their people with someone's armpit right over the top of your head, just unable to move. So I think that's even more than the smell as well. It's like the taste in your mouth. It just, yeah,
Oh,
up
yeah.
there for me.
That's no good. I am not up for that. No. Thank you so much for being here. It has been so awesome to talk to you.
I loved it. I'm sure we'll chat again.
I'm sure we will.